Hello and welcome to a video that will be going over the Pulverize Druid build, or my version of it at least. I am gonna talk about all the skill trees that I have, the adjustments that I've made that I think make it a little more interesting, also more power, and it's a build that is extremely powerful. I'm sure many people already know that. And mostly revolves around Pulverize, a incredibly powerful ability, and the main thing that we'll be using as we go through clearing dungeons. Now to start off, which is pretty obvious, but possibly not the normal pick, I go with Storm Strike and Enhanced Storm Strike. This is to get a Storm skill as well as a basic ability that is has a pretty strong passive effect. You gain 25% damage reduction. That's a very nice bonus, and it actually chains to 3 surrounding enemies, and I believe that those enemies generate, or each time it hits an extra enemy, it generates more spirit. That then leads to Pulverize. We're maxing that out, of course. We get the Enhanced for the overpower, and the stun, Raging Pulverize, stuns enemies. Pick up Heart of the Wild, just to get access to wild impulses. Again, this is something that's normal. Everyone will probably be, if you're playing a Pulverize build, that's something everyone will be doing. Then for defense, I just get 1 point to get access to Iron Fur, something that is optional depending on how survivable you feel. Then we get to the defensives, where there's Earthen Bulwark. I like this with the legendary, which makes it last an extra 6 seconds. Makes it a very nice way to get unstoppable, and that's quite important for this build since we are not using Grizzly Rage, and I will talk about that later. Next is Blood Howl, very nice heal. We get that, and the reduction, and then the spirit. This is a way to maintain spirit and your health, as well as a damage reduction buff very easily as you're going around slaughtering enemies. This will get pretty much reset, and something you can spam as long as you're killing enemies. The next part, after doing all the defensives, we go all the way, skip past the companions into this part of the tree, the Wrath section. Only have 1 point in trample. You could potentially, since I have plus skills, take a point out of this. Now, I've been experimenting a bit. I did have a point in Enhanced Trample and then Savage Trample for the spirit generation, but I've been trying without, and I think for where I am at the moment it seems okay. I get a lot of spirit already, so that allows me to put some points elsewhere. We then go to Crushing Earth. This is crucial, very powerful effect. Gonna get 3, 3, and 3 in all of these points. It's gonna amplify your damage. This is gonna amplify your damage while fortified for 50% of your max life or higher. And then Safeguard is gonna fortify you whenever you crit with an earth skill. Pulverize is an Earth skill because of a legendary that we use. So this whole setup is very good, very powerful. Safeguard, incredibly strong. We're pretty much always critting, or like half the time we will be. And in big pulls, it's gonna crit on some enemies at least. So we'll be getting a lot of Fortify through that. That leads to this part, and this is where the build for me diverges perhaps from some others. I have Quick Shift. It's a nice thing for this build, especially with the version I'm playing, since I swap form a little bit more. It's just a 15% multiplier when you swap form. Or specifically when you use a Pulverize from a different form. So say you're in human form and then you use Pulverize, that will swap you into the bear form, giving you the damage bonus. Heightened senses, again, this is a defensive option that is somewhat optional depending on where you are in the game. I just picked it up because I think it's nice to have the extra damage reduction, and I don't really feel like I need points elsewhere. It's just a nice mix of defense and offense. Then we come to Defiance. This is the Nature Magic Enhance, which Pulverize is, since we have the legendary. That makes it an Earth skill. That being this, I have on my gloves, the Sign Horror. Then that leads to Natural Disaster. This is very powerful. Earth skills do 12 times increase to vulnerable enemies. Vulnerable multiplier. Vulnerable is already very strong. Multiplier on top of that is a great pickup, which then leads to another multiplier, which baseline is 6%, or 6% times increase to the damage. This gets tripled if you are rotating between Earth and Storm skills, and this is what brings us back to the start where I have Storm Strike, which makes it even more valuable. Purely the main reason to have it, really. Rotating and getting that extra damage, not something I always do, but for some elites, or definitely bosses, it's a way to amplify your damage to truly absurd amounts. On top of that, I use Ursine Strength, another damage multiplier, as well as max health, which helps boost your Fortify. Makes it more efficient, I would say. You got other options. This got buffed recently, but I think for the build I'm playing, I'd rather not. Maybe some other variation could use that. There's also Earth and Might, which is very nice for resource. There's builds that use this as well, but I prefer to stay away from Earth and Might, since I like the extra damage that Strength gives, as well as a bit of survivability. And I also have Petrify. This is a damage multiplier. Actually got buffed by 5%. And you stun everything pretty much on screen. It's a massive area of effect. And baseline, I think it's 3 seconds. You get a point that increases effect, so it's 4 seconds stun to everything around you, and they take 30% times increased crit strike damage. Against bosses, it's 50% times increased, and it lasts for 7 seconds, as you can see there. I have the final point. Killing generates, or enemies affected by Petrify grants 25 spirit. Very good for refreshing. This is a very big part of why I feel I don't need Earth and Light. Playing with this gives you a 30 to 50 times multiplier, which is really powerful. The stun is really powerful, and then the resources you get from this is also just like a refresh in big pulls. You'll be killing everything, getting some resource back from other paragon nodes, and then this giving a huge amount. I think it's also nicer since this build utilizes form swapping. So you're going to be casting Storm Strike and then Pulverize, and then that gives you Quick Shift as well as the Resonance multipliers. And the key thing is abilities like that are like Storm spells, Earth, and Werewolf. None of those are Werebear, which means in Grizzly Rage you cannot use them, which is something that is a little awkward, I think. I didn't like the limitation of only having the Werebear skills in Grizzly Rage. So I think this setup is just a lot nicer to play, at least personally for me. That said, Grizzly Rage, an obvious powerhouse, still very strong. And the unstoppable that you gain with this point is a real big reason to have this. With that said, I think playing without it, with this setup, and getting the extra duration on Earthen Bulwark means I have Unstoppable for a high amount anyway, and I feel perfectly fine with this. So that's pretty much the skill tree. Everything there has a lot of amplifications and synergies, which makes it feel quite nice. Then there's the Paragon board, which starts off standard node. This is something that everyone should have seen. I just work my way through on the right side, go up, grab this node. I have Werebear in here. It's nice defense and damage bonus. And then continue up onto the Survival Instincts board, which is a very powerful board, lots of good effects. Picking up this for offense and defensive reasons. Increases to armor. It's just massive. And then I have Exploit here. This is a very, very powerful glyph. Vulnerable, being applied. And it's a nice, pretty much only consistent way of applying it. And then it basically guarantees that if something doesn't get killed in one hit, it'll almost certainly die in 2 hits, excluding bosses and some elites, which maybe take a few more hits, at least at my level. Then pick up here, we get some nodes, bonus damage, damage to healthy. This affects the damage you deal to enemies that are above 80%. This is damage while healthy, which increases your damage while you are above 80%. That's a important thing to distinguish. This effect is something that you can have up a lot of the time, just because of the defensive power. I'm pretty much always above 80%. Then we'll go into... Actually, first I'll talk about this board. This is something that is kind of crucial. You go up and grab 2 Spirit on Kill. This is the Ancestral Guidance board, and it is something that makes this playable, I would say. It's absolutely fundamental to being able to spam Pulverize. Killing enemies, getting big pulls, and then refunding loads of spirit from these points. This is something that you need On earlier levels I went directly into this board just to acquire this, but now I can have a different board set up first. Then I come in here just purely to get this, that's all I want really. Spirit on kill, you get +1 there, +1 here, and then 2, so that's 4. You get some max spirit, which is nice, just to stock pull it, and then you come over and we grab this, which is just extra damage for every 75 spirit we spend. That leads over to this board. This is the Inner Beast board, and this board has some very nice perks in it. The legendary is okay. We do actually shapeshift and form swap, so this is a node that you could use with this build. I don't currently have it unlocked, but with more points that's definitely a pickup that you could get. So far I am slowly working at acquiring the points for this. This is another boost, damage while fortified. This is something we maintain almost permanently. It's a very big buff to damage, as well as some damage reduction, so it's a nice mix of offense and defense. I like to connect the board on the side, so it's coming through and then going over into this armor node, which then leads to the glyphs. Slowly pick up points in this. I'm trying to get all the intelligence, so the pathing for that is probably going to look something like going around here, down, and then over, picking up these points from the shapeshifter side. I am trying to skip the strength nodes. That will then lead into going down here. From here we can continue putting points over into this and connecting another board, which the Earthen Devastation is a great board. This is lots of more damage multipliers since we got an Earth skill, crowd control modifiers, crit strike damage modifiers. That can be connected, and then you can continue going into this. The legendary is something you definitely want to pick up, and then the glyph bonus you get here. Crit strike damage with Earth skills, a very nice effect to have in the center. But this is where I am at the moment, level 80, so not that far into the paragon board. I have probably an extra board that I could get after that, but I'm still working on what to pick up. So this is what I have so far. Then I can demonstrate some of the power of this build now.
I'm out of spirit. I must wait a moment.
one thing I forgot to mention is the spirit bonds on this page. Get the reduced damage from elites with the deer, talons for crit strike chance, another crit strike damage multiplier is fairly standard. I have lucky hit for spirit, and then ultimate cooldown reduction, lucky hit, calm before the storms. That's a nice way to reset petrify. And that's the spirit boons.
I'm not ready yet. I must wait a moment.
Just need to kill a couple of things. This dungeon. Everything. Oh.
I'm not ready yet.
This is a tier 29, by the way.
I'm not ready yet.
So the enemies in here are 3 levels higher. Which is the
I must wait a moment.
Go. Incredibly powerful, damaging setup that just feels amazing to play. You clear at incredible speeds, and it deals well with pretty much anything. You can just go pull big packs, clear them with ease. Against elites, you've got the defense to deal with them. Enemies at range and melee just get taken out. That's because you're running this legendary. It's pretty much the standard setup for Pulverize. Oh, I should go over. There's the crit enhance for earth skills. That's another 38% times multiplier for damage. Some resource actually on the ring when hitting crowd controlled enemies. And then the slow on this is the crowd control that we trigger. So every time I pulverize, they get slowed. And then core skills do increased damage based on amount of fortify. Fortify is almost always capped. Most of the time it is, so that's just a great increase again. Crucial legendary, Pulverize becoming an earth skill. than this making a shockwave are like the two key components. Everything else is more of a damage buff. The unique chest is extremely good for this. Plus ranks is very nice. Helps buff up the base damage of Pulverize. And then on the boots I have plus ranks to Earth, which is again plus ranks to Pulverize. Helps buff up the base damage, and then everything that multiplies it just further increases it. And then on the legs, the 6-second increase to Earthen Bulwark, as well as the effect of replenishing or adding to the barrier when killing enemies with Earth Skulls. So that's the full setup. I hope this was interesting and enjoyable for anyone wanting to play a big bear build. Brilliant blasting. Then this is a setup that I would say is pretty fun, very powerful, and I hope you try it out and enjoy. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.